Hey y'all, GrannyDee here. Look at my squirrels, Nutty Buddy, and Flat Sam or Sammy. I think I like Flat Sammy. Alright, I'm just going to dive right back into this. Is just going to be a story time because we didn't get to read much before. Okay, when last we were reading, Tom had just gotten away from Aunt Polly, and she was worried about not punishing him, or she was talking about making him work Saturdays when all the other boys were having a holiday. He hates work more than he hates anything, yada yada. Yeah, I'm hanging over like this so y'all can see. So, I may get me back in the middle. Y'all know who we are by now. All right? Love y'all. Here we go. Tom did play hooky, and he had a very good time. He got back home barely in season to help Jim, the small colored boy, saw next day's wood and split the kindling before supper. At least he was there in time to tell his adventures to Jim while Jim did 3/4 of the work. Tom's young brother, or rather half-brother, Sid, was already through with his part of the work, picking up chips, for he was a quiet boy and had no adventurous, troublesome ways. And I'm not meaning to offend anybody by reading this book. This is an old book, and I had to pick one that was in public domain. So when they refer to African Americans as colored, sorry about that. That's just the book. Doesn't has I don't have any. I don't agree with that. Let's just say that. Not in this day and time, but just reading the book. While Tom was eating his supper and stealing sugar as opportunity offered, Aunt Polly asked him questions that were full of guile and very deep, for she wanted to trap him into damaging revealments. Like many other simple-hearted souls, it was her pet vanity to believe that she was endowed with a talent for dark and mysterious diplomacy, and she loved to contemplate her most transparent devices as marvels of low cunning. Said she, "Tom, it was middling warm in school today, warn't it?" "Yes'm." "Powerful warm, warn't it?" "Yes'm." "Didn't you want to go in a swimming, Tom?" A bit of scare shot through Tom, a touch of uncomfortable suspicion. He searched Aunt Polly's face, but it told him nothing. So he said, "No, well, not very much." The old lady reached out her hand and felt Tom's shirt and said, "But you ain't too warm now, though." And it flattered her to reflect that she had discovered that the shirt was dry without anybody knowing that was what she had in mind. But in spite of her, Tom knew where the wind lay now, so he forestalled what might be the next move. "Some of us pumped on our heads. Mine's damp yet, see?" Aunt Polly was vexed to think she had overlooked that bit of circumstantial evidence and missed a trick. And then she had a new inspiration. "Tom, you didn't have to undo your shirt collar where I sewed it to pump on your head, did you? Unbutton your jacket." The trouble vanished out of Tom's face. He opened his jacket. His shirt collar was securely sewed. "Bother. Well, go along with you. I'd made sure you'd played hooky and been a swimming, but I forgive you, Tom. I reckon you're kind of a singed cat, as the saying goes. It's better'n you look this time." She was half sorry her Sagacity, and I know that word, sagacity, I have to look that one up, had miscarried, and half glad sagacity, and I might be mispronouncing that, but it's wisdom, had miscarried, and half glad that Tom had stumbled into obedient conduct for once. But Sydney said, "Well, now, if I didn't think you sewed his collar with white thread, but it's black." "Why, I did sew it with white, Tom." But Tom didn't wait for the rest. As he went out at the door, he said, "Siddy, I'll lick you for that." In a safe place, Tom examined 2 large needles which were thrust into the the lapels of his jacket and had thread bound about them. One needle carried white thread and one needle carried black. He said, she'd have never noticed if it hadn't been for Sid, confound it. Sometimes she sews it with white, sometimes she sews it with black. I wish to Jiminy she'd stick to one or to other. I could keep a run of 'em, but I bet you I'll lamb Sid for that. I'll learn him. He was not the model boy of the village. He knew the model boy very well, though, and loathed him. Within 2 minutes, or even less, he had forgotten all his troubles, not because his troubles were one whit less heavy and bitter to him than another man's are. Doggone it, I keep losing my place. Not because his troubles were one whit less bitter to him than another man's are to a man, but because a new and powerful interest bore them down and drove them out of his mind for the time, just as men's misfortunes are forgotten in the excitement of new enterprises. This new interest was a valued novelty in whistling. This new interest, which he had just acquired from a Negro, and he was suffering to practice it undisturbed. Again, old terms. It consisted in a peculiar bird-like turn, a sort of liquid warble, produced by touching the tongue to the roof of the mouth at short intervals in the midst of the music. The reader probably remembers how to do it if he has ever been a boy or girl. Diligence and attention soon gave him the knack of it, and he strode down the street with his mouth full of harmony and his soul full of gratitude. He felt much as an astronomer feels who has discovered a new planet, no doubt, as far as strong, deep, unalloyed pleasure is concerned. The advantage was with the boy, not the astronomer. The summer evenings were long, and it was not dark yet. Presently Tom checked his whistle. A stranger was before him, a boy a shade larger than himself. A newcomer of any age or either sex was an impressive curiosity in the poor little shabby village of St. Petersburg. This boy was well dressed, too, well dressed on a weekday. This was simply astounding. His cap was a dainty thing. His close-buttoned blue cloth roundabout was new and natty, and so were his pantaloons. He had shoes on, and it was only a Friday. He even wore a necktie, a bright bit of ribbon. He had a citified air about him that ate into Tom's vitals. The more Tom stared at the splendid marvel, the higher he turned up his nose at his finery, the shabbier and shabbier his own outfit seemed to him to grow. Neither boy spoke. If one moved, the other moved, but only sidewise. And I'm not going to stop to read all these side notes, but if any of you need anything explained, I'll be glad to. If you'll put that in the comments, I'll be glad to mention that next time. Only sideways in a circle. They kept face to face and eye to eye all the time. Finally, Tom said, "I can lick you. I'd like to see you try it." "Well, I can do it." "No, you can't either." "Yes, I can." "No, you can't." "I can." "You can't." Can't. An uncomfortable pause, and Tom said, "What's your name?" "'Tisn't any of your business, maybe." "Well, I allow I'll make it my business." "Well, why don't you?" "If you say much, I will." "Much. There now." "Oh, you think you're mighty smart, don't you? I could lick you with one hand tied behind me if I wanted to." "Well, why don't you do it?" "You say you can do it." "Well, I will if you fool with me." Yes, I've seen whole families in the same fix." "Smarty, you think you're some now, don't you?" "Oh, what a hat." "You can lump that hat if you don't like it. I dare you to knock it off, and anybody that'll take a dare will suck eggs." "You're a liar." "You're another." "You're a fighting liar and doesn't take it up." Take a walk." "Say, if you give me much more of your sass, I'll take and bounce a rock off of your head." Of course you will." "Well, I will." Well, why don't you do it then? Why do you keep saying you will for? Why don't you do it? It's because you're afraid. I ain't afraid. You are. I ain't. You are. Another pause and more eyeing and sidling around each other. Presently, they were shoulder to shoulder, and Tom said, "Get away from here." "Go away yourself." "I won't." "Well, I won't either." So they stood, each with a foot placed at an angle as a brace, and both shoving with might and main and glowering at each other with hate, but neither could get an advantage. After struggling till both were hot and flushed, each relaxed his strain with watchful caution, and Tom said, "You're a coward and a pup. I'll tell my big brother on you. He can thrash you with his little finger. I'll make him do it, too." "What do I care for your big brother? I got a brother that's bigger than he is, and what's more, he can throw him over that fence, too." Both brothers were imaginary. "That's a lie. Your saying so don't make it so." Tom drew a line in the dust with his big toe and said, "I dare you to step over that, and I'll lick you till you can't stand up. Anybody that'll take a dare will steal sheep." The new boy stepped over promptly and said, "Now you said you'd do it. Let's see you do it." "Don't you crowd me now. You better look out." "Well, you said you'd do it. Why don't you do it?" "By jingo, for 2 cents I will do it." The new boy took 2 broad coppers out of his pocket and held them out with derision. Tom struck them to the ground. In an instant, both boys were rolling and tumbling in the dirt, gripped together like cats, and for the space of a minute, they tugged and tore at each other's hair and clothes and punched and scratched at each other's noses and covered themselves with dust and glory. Presently, the confusion took form, and through the fog of battle, Tom appeared, seated astride the new boy and pounding him with his fist. "Holler knife," he said. The boy only struggled to free himself. He was crying mainly from rage. "Holler knife," and the pounding went on. At last the stranger got out a smothered "Knife," and Tom let him up and said, "Now that'll learn you. Better look out who you fooling with next time." The new boy went off brushing the dust from his clothes, sobbing, snuffling, and occasionally looking back and shaking his head, and threatening what he would do to Tom the next time he caught him out, to which Tom responded with jeers and started off in high feather. And as soon as his back was turned, the new boy snatched up a stone, threw it, and hit him between the shoulders, and then turned tail and ran like an antelope. Tom chased the traitor home and thus found out where he lived. He then held a position at the gate for some time, daring the enemy to come outside, but the enemy only made faces at him through the window and declined. At last, the enemy's mother appeared and called Tom a bad, vicious, vulgar child and ordered him away. So he went away, but he said he lowed to lay for that boy. He got home pretty late that night, and when he climbed cautiously in at the window, he uncovered an ambuscade? Don't know what that is. An ambush, it says. Ambuscade, maybe. In the person of his aunt. So his aunt was there. And when she saw the state of his clothes, wherein her resolution to turn his Saturday holiday into captivity at hard labor became adamant in its firmness. So it sounds like Tom's in for it. He's going to have to spend his Saturday working. So, I don't know, should I read a little more or stop there? We just finished chapter 1. I had hardly read any of chapter 1 before. I'll stop there because we're not on to 15 minutes. And I do want to mention again about African American folks being called different names back then than we would call. Will not say the one name, but I hope nobody's offended by that. Like I said, I had to look for something that kind of spoke to me as far as the way I talk, my southern lingo and such, and a lot of these do have mom's words in them, and a lot of you said you seem to enjoy it, but I won't continue reading if it's gonna bug up some of you. So just let those of you who want to read it continue reading. Maybe I could find something else, but y'all let me know. Y'all let me know. And yes, this is Knit Purl and Squirrel with Granny Dee, and I do have a lot of whips. Still haven't finished those first 2 whips I showed you in my very first video. ADD, struggle is real, y'all. I didn't bring any in here, those 2 in here to show you, but I'm just from one thing to another, one thing to another. Squirrels, squirrels, squirrels. And hey and bye to Manager Bells and Jules, my grand youngins. To all my youngins, I'm not going to name everybody. Youngins, they're men folk. And all you folks out there, Granny Dee loves you. Mwah. Next time we'll be more with the knitting and the crocheting and stuff. Okay? Love you. Bye.